You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
I'm Daniel, and this is the Monday Night Community Show. We're talking to our regular visitor, Ian Goodwin from the Sheppey Coastguards. Ian, what safety advice do you have for us?
If you go on the actual Maritime and Coastguard Agency's website and click under safety, there is 5 key safety messages. Get trained, check the weather and tides, wear a life jacket, avoid alcohol, keep in touch. They are the 5 key messages. And the reason why they're the 5 key messages is if you do all of those, you're unlikely to get into what we do, the vast majority of things, in terms of what the Coast Guard Rescue Service does. In other words, get yourself trained, get yourself familiar with whatever you're doing, check your weather and tides. So many people go to sea without checking weather and without checking the tides. Wear a life jacket. A lot of people drown because they don't wear it. Avoid alcohol, certainly doesn't mix, and keep in touch. Let people know where you are and when you're coming back. Now, I'm indebted this evening to Colin Ingram, who's my sector manager, who sent me some information today, and it's come via Roger Harris, the social media and communications coordinator for the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. And if you're both listening, thank you very much, chaps, because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pick out some of those aspects of what I've just talked about, right. But I'm going to put them in the context of Sheppey. And I'm not suggesting that we drink a lot of alcohol on Sheppey, but it is the season of goodwill. We're coming up to Christmas, and the sea and alcohol do not mix. We advise against setting to sea if you've been or are drinking alcohol. If you've been drinking, your judgment will be impaired, and you will be more likely to make mistakes, which at sea could be life-threatening. Alcohol plays a major contributing factor in a significant number of maritime deaths every year. So, and I mean, I've been involved in people who decide it would be a good idea to go swimming in the middle of, in winter time because they've had too much alcohol. People think they're invincible, and they're not, because the cold weather and the cold water will rapidly kill you. Training. If you get trained, you will be far less likely to be involved in a maritime incident. If you do get into difficulty, you'll also know how to get the right help quickly, reducing the impact of your problem. In terms of weathers and tides, always check the weather and tidal conditions before you set out so you can prepare accordingly. Consider whether you become cut off and do not take risks. Do not attempt to climb cliffs as a shortcut back to the top. Now, we do get a lot of people who think they can walk from Laysdown along the cliffs, along the coast, should I say, all the way to Minster. They either get stuck in the mud or they get cut off by the tides. It's not a wise move. We do get a lot of dog walkers at this time of the year. We've just had a lot of water. A lot of rain has come down. Stay away from cliff edges as they become crumbly or slippery when wet. Always keep your dog on a lead near cliffs. Do not attempt to rescue a dog which is being swept out to sea yourself. This is because you're likely to get into difficulty, and many dogs return to shore alive, but some of the owners do not. Call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard. If you do go along the cliffs and coastal paths, make sure you're properly equipped for walking along them. In particular, remember to wear sturdy shoes or boots, and check the weather forecast before you set out. Don't attempt to climb up and down cliffs unless you're properly equipped and trained to do so. Do not attempt self-rescue. If you get into difficulties, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard. We also have a lot of mud on Sheppey. If you become stuck in the mud, try to spread your weight as much as possible. And if you're fortunate enough to have a mobile, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard. Avoid moving and stay as calm as you can. And discourage others from attempting to rescue, since without the proper equipment, they could become stuck too. So those are some general safety advice for this time of the year, Daniel.
Ian, I know you wanted to talk about Chinese lanterns next.
Yeah, I do. Only because it's coming up to the season when people do let them off. The public are urged to inform the Coast Guard when using Chinese lanterns. The growing popularity of Chinese lanterns, especially at weddings and beach barbecues, has prompted the Coast Guard to ask the public for advance warning when releasing them off and along the UK coastline. I did notice last year at the, I think it was New Year's Eve, there was quite a large number of Chinese lanterns about over my house, about 500 feet in the air, and there was at least 25 of them. And there's a growing concern, particularly from the National Farmers Union, who say that the lanterns pose a risk to animal welfare and are a fire hazard when they land within crops, woodlands and farmyards. Now, I've had direct experience of this. I came home and found one of these Chinese lanterns, which once they're lit, they obviously burn for a considerable long time, and this had come down in my back garden and nearly set fire to my garden furniture, which was in very close proximity to my house, so I wasn't a bit too pleased. Whilst they're considered to be good luck in the Far East, these lanterns have brought problems for the UK Coast Guard. And the reason being is when they are lit, they can soar for over a mile in the sky, visible for up to 20 minutes on a clear night. And the big problem is, Daniel, that they are increasingly mistaken for maritime distress signals. And, if you are going to let them off near the coast, please inform the Coast Guard. Please refrain from using them near airports, heathland and other areas likely to catch fire, and always avoid releasing them in built-up residential areas. Now, probably well aware, we are getting a number of aircrafts now coming over the island, aren't we, who are landing in, I believe, in Southend Airport, and these Chinese lanterns will be a danger to them because at the heights at which these lanterns can actually go at. And we have a countless number of these lanterns which cause all the Coast Guard teams around the coast to be paged. We have to drop everything and go and pick up the Coast Guard vehicle, and they are taking up valuable resources. And as I say, they do look like maritime distress signals, so we can't ignore them. So we do plead and do urge the public, if you are going to let off Chinese lanterns, particularly near the coast, please let the Coast Guard know.
Ian, I know we're going to go over some of the incidents you've and the Coast Guards have covered since you were last on air.
Yeah, to start off, since the last on air, Saturday the 21st of September at 11:15 at night, 23:15 hours, we were tasked by Thames following a report of a missing despondent male who abandoned his vehicle at Kay's Casino. And assistance was requested by the Kent Police. I know the police had a helicopter out with thermal imaging that night, and when we arrived on scene, we did a shoreline search from Beach Street to the Boom. For those listeners who don't know where the Boom is, it's about, if you stand on Minster Beach and look to your right.
Right.
If you look to your right. Oh, very good, Daniel. If you look to the east as well, you'll see the Boom, and it's a series of sunken boats. And it used to be a little net that used to go, large net, that used to go all the way to Shrewsbury, stop the U-boats coming up during the Second World War. And you can still see this there. Anyway, the male was aged 30, and he'd recently suffered a family bereavement. Now, we spent somewhere in the region of about 3 hours searching the coastline. He was eventually found the next day, safe and well, which was good news. On Saturday the 29th of September, at 7 o'clock in the evening, we had a report of an overdue vessel. Now, the craft had launched from Sheerness near Tesco's with 2 persons on board, and a friend had contacted the Coast Guard when the craft was overdue. Now, unbeknown to the friend, the craft had come ashore somewhere else, and they didn't contact the friend, and they were safe. And that's regarded as a false alarm with good intent. And the friend made the correct decision in alerting the Coast Guard. Had the vessel been in difficulty, a rescue operation could have been put in place. And the moral of this incident is to ensure that when you go ashore, you contact those expecting you home if you decide to change your plans. Excuse me. And that's one of those key messages, tell people where you are, keep in touch. Saturday the 20th of October, at 5:30 in the evening, we were paged to a report of a 22-foot cabin cruiser which had suffered engine failure and dropped anchor somewhere between the King's Ferry Bridge and Ridham Dock. Now we made our way to the Elmley Marshes, and there's a hill there where we can get a good vantage point and to see if we could see the casualty vessel. The Sheerness inshore lifeboat was launched and took the craft under tow and began to return to the Queenborough all-tide landing. Now, whilst en route to Queenborough from Elmley, we were alerted to another 99 call. A member of the public had reported an object drifting off the shingle bank at Minster. So when we arrived at Minster, we met the first informant, and we ascertained that the object he had sighted was a kayak and its owner. And that kayak and its owner were now safe on the shore and was packing up his equipment into his vehicle. And having chatted to the casualty, it was made clear that it was in no difficulty and that he regularly goes out in the water for exercise. So we passed on advice requesting he contact Thames when he goes out and the duration he intends to spend on the water, and also when he returns to the shore as a safeguard for his safety, knowing that someone will be waiting for his call. Now, once the incident at Minster was concluded, we made our way back to the Queenborough to meet the Sheerness inshore lifeboat, and the incident was it ascertained that the distributor cap had ruptured, causing engine failure. Now, we were stood down at 5 to 8, and at 8 o'clock we received a full team call out after a member of the public had reported her husband had been missing since 5 o'clock when he had taken the dog for a walk. And the last contact she's had with him stated that he was trapped at the bottom of the cliff somewhere between Sheerness and Eastchurch. Now, with this information, a request was placed for the Sheppey Coastguard Cliff Rescue Team to be mobilised, and a search pattern was established. Now, the Sheppey Coastguards, assisted by the Kent Police and the police helicopter, excuse me, I've had a bad throat for the last month, searched from the Minster Leas to Eastchurch, where the male was located by helicopter, and we assisted with his recovery to the top of the cliffs, where he's passed into the care of the Kent Police and was checked over by the ambulance, and we returned to station and closed down at 22:30. Friday the 27th of November, we were tasked to assist the Royal Navy Explosive Ordnance Department at Sheerness Docks. A dredger had trawled up a World War II parachute mine. I don't actually know what the outcome of this. It certainly didn't go off because we would have heard it. But a World War II parachute mine is literally just what it says. It says it's a mine that used to come down on a parachute, and it was some of these things they were designed to actually explode at about just before they hit the ground, so they would cause maximum collateral damage. On Sunday the 25th of November, we had two incidents. In the morning, we were tasked to Cheney Rock following a report of a vessel taking on water. Now, the craft was called the Valkyrie of Whitstable. For those of you who don't know what a Valkyrie is, it's apparently a Nord mythology, is it? I think it is Nord mythology, where it's the females who decided who the men were going to die in battle. I think that's what a Valkyrie is. Right. And it was a 3.5 metre vessel with two persons on board, and unfortunately it had broken its moorings from number 5 berth at the docks earlier on that day, and once underway it became apparent that there was damage below the high water mark. The vessel started to take on water, and it was towed to Sheerness Harbour by the all-weather lifeboat, where the water was pumped out. And whilst we were dealing with that, we were tasked to locate two children reported in All Creek in a dinghy. Fortunately, the craft was located by the Police Marine Unit, and the two casualties, who were aged 14 and 15, were retrieving their energy and required no further advice. We just give some safety advice, just passed on. They were actually covered in a lot of mud, so they could have been in quite a dangerous situation if they were not careful. And the final one was this Saturday on the 2nd of December. Was it the 2nd of December or the 1st of December? Yeah. We were tasked at 4:30 in the afternoon to assist Kent Police following a report of an aircraft which had caught fire and had allegedly crashed near Royal Oak Point, near to, somewhere dear to us. And after an extensive search and having spoken to the first informants, who were two elderly ladies, and the description of how the aircraft got lower into the sky and less bright, I think people concluded that the incident was in fact the sun setting. So rather an unusual one, not actually ever been called, but from what they described and the way exactly and where it was going down in the west and how it went down, we actually think they saw the setting sun. And, we regard that as a false alarm with good intent. It's not something we get every day, but clearly on this occasion, two persons actually thought they saw an aircraft going down, and they raised the alarm quite rightly.
And Ian, before you go, I was just wondering if you could let our listeners know, of course, what the answer was to that brain test.
Yeah, a single Matthew Walker, a cat's paw, a double diamond and a climb heist are all knots. A single Matthew Walker is a decorative knot, stops the end of a rope frame. A cat's paw is is for connecting a rope to an object, similar to what we call a cow hitch. A double diamond is a very attractive and useful stopper knot. It's used in the standing part of the rope rather than at the end of the rope. And a climb heist is very similar to a brush sling, which we use on the Coast Guard service, and it's a friction knot in essence. And then I mentioned the Turk's head and the monkey's fist, which are also knots. So that's exactly what they are. In terms of if you want any further information, follow us on Twitter. We've got Twitter at MCA_media, or you can look us up on www.facebook.com/MCA. And all it left to me is just to reiterate the 5 key safety message, which are: get trained, check the weather and tides, wear a life jacket, avoid alcohol, keep in touch. I'll see you in the new year, and I wish you all your listeners a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So thank you very much, Daniel, for inviting me on.
No, as always, thanks, Ian, and have a good Christmas.
My pleasure, and you too.
That's Ian Goodwin from the Sheppey Coastguards right here at BRFM on the Monday Night Community Show.